Hello, thank you for joining us today. I am here with Susan Holt, who is the director of the Fresno County Department of Behavioral Health. My name is Vera Mijojlic. I am the founder and director of the Southeast European Film Festival in Los Angeles, but I am a journalist by training, and I love interviewing people and hearing their stories. So I've read about you and I've heard about you, of course, and I know that you run a very big agency here. It's about 700 people on staff, and you run 70, probably more, programs across different areas of your work with some collaborators in the community. So tell us a little bit more about it, and thank you for finding the time to share your insights with us.
You are quite welcome. It's a pleasure and honor to be here to tell you a little bit about what we do in the Department of Behavioral Health in Fresno County. We are the county behavioral health plan. We serve individuals predominantly who have Medi-Cal or who have no insurance and no ability to pay for their services. We provide mental health care and substance use disorder services across 6,000 square miles in a population of over 1 million people. We work collaboratively, as you said. We deliver some of the care ourselves with our excellent clinical staff, and we have a very robust network of contracted providers all across the county and across other counties for levels of care that our Central Valley doesn't have here. So we really do span all across the state. It's quite an enormous responsibility and an absolute honor to serve.
It's a tall order,
It is.
no matter what. And how do you balance that, leading the agency, but also keeping your ear to the ground, so to speak, and knowing what the community needs are?
The best thing about a large organization is that you have a big family to draw from. So I am always mindful that it is we, not me. I have the honor and privilege to lead, but I come alongside every single person in our organization. So we have team members who are out in the community. To the point you asked about in terms of understanding the need in the community, we host listening sessions. We're out in schools working with the community to understand how to best serve them. And then within our department, I do a live YouTube broadcast for my department employees.
Our competition.
I'm a YouTube star for my department.
Well, this is news, really. We have to incorporate that somehow into this the conversation.
It's a wonderful tool. We started that in the pandemic with our former director, a lovely, wonderful leader who had been leading our organization for more than 8 years. And during the pandemic, we had a need to get information out quickly to the department. And we had a team member who figured out how to do a live YouTube broadcast. And we carried forward that tradition. So I provide live to all department employees updates on what's happening within the department, any policy changes, and they can ask me questions live during that. So it's an awesome opportunity to have multi-directional communication within the department. So that is a fun tool that we have.
But speaking of the communities, what other outreach programs, can you tell us a little bit about it? What you have seen in your practice that works better, and can you tell us why?
One of the things that works the best is when we're collaborating across multiple sectors. We know that, let's just be real, stigma exists about mental health and about addiction. And stigma looks different in different cultures. So one of the strategies that works the best is to work within communities with trusted leaders and trusted messengers who look like their community, who grew up in their community.
And speak their language.
And coming alongside those leaders and those community members with listening ears rather than speaking voice on our end, it really is a more respectful way to engage. The regulations are shifting, and so our community planning process is evolving based on new regulations in California, but the value we hold is always to be community-centric.
Speaking of this, the new things that are coming up down the pipeline, there's of course the care court and the new legislation about it that the governor signed into law. What has been your experience so far? What residential facilities exist here, both inpatient and outpatient?
The CARE Act has been a new way across California to help some individuals, those who have schizophrenia or schizophrenia spectrum psychotic disorders, to access treatment in ways that they haven't accessed previously. Some individuals with psychotic disorders have a condition known as anosognosia, where they don't have an awareness of an illness being present. And that makes it really hard to accept services. What the CARE Act provides is an opportunity for that supportive and relentless engagement, where someone who's an eligible petitioner can ask the courts to permit us to do that assertive engagement work,
right,
and to keep coming back. And so that ability to keep coming back to the person and offering services in new and different ways and to build a relationship with the support of the court is really novel. And what we've seen in Fresno is that we've been able to leverage the cross-sector relationships that we have. And what we're seeing is that folks are engaging in the services. It takes us quite a bit of work on the front end, but we're starting to see the dividends of that investment.
You say that, yeah, excellent. So I'm wondering about the crisis teams when you deploy them in case of somebody experiencing psychotic crisis.
In our community, in Fresno County, there's 2 pathways for a crisis response to happen in the community. We have a phone number for everyone who lives in Fresno County to call for someone who's experiencing a behavioral health crisis that's not violent. So if someone is psychotic or severely depressed, maybe they're experiencing symptoms of mania, they have racing thoughts, maybe they're pacing around the house. When that person is experiencing crisis, they can call our crisis number. Our crisis team will do a quick screening to make sure that where that person is safe, that there's no weapons, that there's no act of violence imminent. And if it's a scene that we feel is safe for us to arrive to, we just deploy that clinician and case manager out to the scene, and they do a crisis response in the community as quickly as we can get out to them. If it's a situation where there's safety risks for the mental health and substance use responders, then that's when we co-respond with law enforcement.
I'm sure on a daily basis you encounter stories and things that are not so easy. It's not every day's, job. How do you balance this work and the things that you see and witness and the families coming apart, whether it's the substance abuse or straight mental illness?
So let's unpack that. That's a deep question. First, I'm a trained therapist, and I was a practicing therapist in this department. I started as a pre-licensed clinician back in 1999, so I'm dating myself a little bit. And I literally worked my way up through the department. And all of those years of training and clinical practice taught me how to take in the trauma, the psychological experiences of others without absorbing it into my being. But that took time.
Sure.
I remember distinctly when I was a clinician working with young people, I was early in my career and I hadn't yet refined that skill of providing that deep empathy and support without compromising well-being.
Right.
And it was an end of the day session, and obviously I won't violate any privacy, but this young person was experiencing active abuse at home. And it was explicitly described to me. And I remember coming home to my house, that's my sanctuary, putting my keys on the counter and crumpling to my knees, literally crumpling to my knees in tears.
Yeah, I believe you. That's a tough one.
It was a powerful lesson in resilience, and it was a powerful lesson for me to come to terms with this profession and to build that resilience professionally, to learn where my boundary was, my emotional boundary, without compromising my ability to have empathy and unconditional positive regard, and to be able to offer the interventions that I needed to for the person. And so that took time and practice. What it also takes is great consultation. I identified mentors who had greater skills than I, whom I could learn from, create a skill set that's my own. I don't believe too much in copycatting others, but you can certainly draw from the strengths
and be inspired by them.
Exactly.
Absolutely. But there's also like incrementally you sort of pass on your experience and both the pitfalls and the successes and some other stories. But there's a really powerful word right behind you on this banner, and that's hope. And hope and the healing does unite people. But hope is also something that is very up front and center for NAMI.
Yes.
The National Alliance on Mental Illness. Do you collaborate with them? Do you see a role for them? How
Yes.
active are they in this community?
So Fresno chapter of NAMI is very active in our community, and we have a strong collaboration. Their executive director, Dr. Amy Parks, is interacting regularly with our department. We refer families to NAMI all the time, professionally and personally. Because of my career and what I do, a lot of folks come to me and say, hey Susan, I need a therapist for my daughter, or my neighbor has a son who has some issues that they're struggling with. Do you have any ideas? And one of my go-to resources is NAMI.
Just to build on that, what other outreach activities or community events or town halls have you seen that have brought more people together? And also, one of the groups that's really tough to reach out to would be addicts and drug abuse in the communities. What have you seen that works, and what would you like to see maybe be developed from the programs you already have? Where do you see the future going?
So substance use disorders are getting a lot of attention, rightfully so. I think for a long time the stigma about substance use has been so strong that it really was a deterrent for seeking help. I think we've started to see some shifts, always.
You think the tide is turning?
I do. I'm also an optimist, but I do.
You are an optimist? Yes, well,
I do.
And we need an optimist in this field.
We do. We do need to have hope. I can always find a bright side. Even if I have to unfold something 6 or 7 times, I'll find the bright side in that. But I do see the tides turning. If there's ever to be a silver lining in something tragic, such as a pandemic, the silver lining is people started talking about mental health. People started talking about addiction. And when we talk about things, we normalize it.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Substance use is exceptionally common, and misuse of substances is very common. But for a long time, we didn't talk about it. And so ways that we talk about it is there's an organization within our community that has one of the longest running substance use disorder awareness events, and it's called Sober Stock, and it's a wonderful opportunity to celebrate services and celebrate recovery. So that's one avenue. But we also believe in being upstream. So we have prevention services predominantly in schools so that young folks are getting exposed to resiliency messaging and skills to be able to prevent substance use. We know that substances are everywhere, no matter the community, they are accessible. And with the technology and social media these days, young people have all sorts of avenues to access substances, in spite of their parents often not believing that that's true. So we're really trying to go about looking at substance use disorders from both the treatment side of the continuum and the prevention side of the continuum. On the treatment side, for the Medi-Cal beneficiaries whom we serve, we have all of the levels of care. We have outpatient services all the way through residential services, as well as withdrawal management as well. And so we work to expand our continuum of care, mostly through contracts with community-based organizations. Again, trusted organizations that the
you
community
work with,
recognizes.
yes. Right. And also you have in the larger Fresno area, you have a really diverse community that is culturally diverse. How do you adapt some of these programs and practices to be culturally appropriate for certain groups?
We have a couple of strategies that we utilize. One is when we're looking for new service providers, obviously as a governmental organization, we have a competitive bid process that we go through. But for quite a number of years, we have requested from the community culture-based services. One of those programs called the Fresno Center, who work with our Southeast Asian community, and they deliver the services in the context of the culture, which we find really valuable to make sure that folks have not just a service in a language, but embedded in the context and fabric of the culture.
Yeah, it does make a huge difference.
We really work hard to ensure that all of our network of service providers, whether that be clinicians or psychiatrists or peer support specialists, have training and cultural humility to understand how to deliver services in the most culturally congruent way, even if that means utilizing an interpreter. That is a skill set unto itself. So we have a training for our clinical staff to teach them how to deliver services with an interpreter, because it's not intuitive. Sometimes when you're working with an interpreter, a person might direct their eyes to the interpreter and have a conversation with them, but you have to have the conversation with the human being that you're serving, and that requires skills.
That's right. It's a whole different set of skills.
A whole different set.
We'd like to see women as role models. That others can learn from, especially young women. Do you know what would be the legacy that you leave?
For our department, I'd love to see a legacy in our impact in the community, where folks know exactly what to do when there's a behavioral health need. I think it's really complicated to navigate healthcare. Even for folks who are well-resourced, it's hard to know who to turn to, how to find a therapist, how to find a drug treatment program. And so I would love to leave a legacy where we're advancing clear communication that's easily accessible across, the communities that we serve, where folks know what to do. That would be a big legacy.
Right. So where does your strength come from and your confidence? What would that be? Is it your family? Is it of your friends?
I once studied the work of Murray Bowen, who taught us that there's an intergenerational transmission of things in our life.
Absolutely.
My grandmother had a serious mental illness, and I didn't really know her very well. She lived in a different state. I loved her very much, but my encounters with her were limited by geography. But I firmly believe that the imprint her life experience had on her 3 daughters, who all became strong women and strong leaders, trickled down into me and inspired something in me to be a strong woman and a strong leader and a behavioral health advocate.
So from the get-go, you have displayed ability, so you're a perfect person for this job. So just a few rapid-fire questions.
Yes.
Is there a book that you like? Is it books that you like? What other activity? Maybe there is some exercise activity or something else that you enjoy doing in your downtime. When you're away from all of this? So if there is such a thing as a downtime for you?
It's a work in progress. And in the last 3 years that I've taken this job as the director, to be fully transparent, self-care has not been my best strength, and I recognize that. It is common among helping professionals that we say, do as I say, not as I do when it comes to taking care of ourselves, and that's not okay. I've decided to prioritize my well-being. I've started exercising and strength training. As a woman of a certain age, I'm concerned about bone strength, and so I've really started to prioritize and reconnected with a passion that I had for fitness.
Right. So what would be your parting advice to such person that maybe is contemplating going into this field?
I would say to any young person who's contemplating going into the behavioral health field that you would be very wise to listen to your intuition, because if you have an interest in behavioral health, then something's calling you to it. There are many, many opportunities. You don't have to become a therapist like I did. You can become a physician or a nurse or a peer support specialist. If you have lived experience and you have come into recovery from a behavioral health condition, we have a job for that. There's a whole certification training. So anyone who's interested in the behavioral health field, there's a wealth of opportunity. There's never been a better time, because as I mentioned, we're talking about mental health and we're talking about substance use disorders, which means the demand for services is exploding.
It is huge.
And so we have great needs across the workforce. So I would say listen to your heart and seek out consultation. If you're in doubt about where to go to become a behavioral health professional, start asking around.
So they can knock on that door
and
meet you.
Absolutely.
And so we're all about empowering young women as well. Where does one can even seek empowerment and inspiration?
I would encourage young people to not seek empowerment externally. because power is from within. No one gives us power. Our strength is generated like a fire in the belly, and it gets warmed up, and that revs us up, and then we perform, which builds confidence. Whether we perform in writing out an assignment, whether we perform in a conversation we have with our parent that's kind of hard to have, but we succeeded and we got our words out, those are successes. If we have an experience where we fail, picking ourselves up from that and saying,
learn from
what an
that,
opportunity to learn.
Absolutely.
Let me deconstruct what happened and find the nuggets of inspiration and the nuggets of wisdom and the nuggets of learning. And so I would really encourage young people to look within, tap into a passion, identify what your strengths are and build on those, and never ever give up. There is always hope.
Well, it's really a total pleasure speaking with you, and also thank you for your service.
Thank you.
You know, it's really inspiring to meet somebody like you. It's a tough job, it's tough work, and it's a tough field. You know,
Very rewarding.
You know,
Thank you. It's an honor
yes.
to do it.
Thank you very much, Susan.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening.